It's casual, not formal. It's hosted by Rory Pendlin. Oh, and Renee in tow. It's time to start the show. 1, 2, 3, go!
Hello, welcome to another episode of It's Casual. I'm Rory Penland, and I'm going to bring up Renee Jaworski, my wonderful director and co-host.
You sounded like Jeff Goldblum there. Do it again. Do it again.
Well, today we're going to talk to an author. My terrible Jeff Goldblum.
My name. I've never heard Jeff Goldblum say my name before. It was Renee Jaworski.
Renee Jaworski is here.
No, I feel like Jeff Goldblum just introduced me.
Somebody in our circle was talking about why didn't I marry Jeff Goldblum, who's 70 now, but he still is very spry and very good.
He's gorgeous. Yeah, he's absolutely gorgeous.
And I said, well, you're not too late. And then I looked up Jeff Goldblum's information, and it said that he had married a 30-year-old or 40-year-old contortionist. Circus act.
Okay, her name is Emily. Gymnast. I follow her on Instagram. I'm obsessed with Emily Goldblum. Yes.
There you go.
They've had like 3 or 4 kids together. Yeah. She's like 30 years his junior, I think. They get along so well. And she's not a contortionist. She was in the Olympics for, I think, dance. There's
it said in Wikipedia that she was a gymnast contortionist.
Okay. Well, she's an athlete. She's an Olympian. She's an Olympian, and she's brilliant. And she publishes all their amazing adventures on her Instagram. And she has her own fitness classes. And then every now and then she has him come, and he's just goofing off. And she's like trying to teach him how to, stretch. And I recommend everybody don't follow Jeff Goldblum's Instagram. Follow Emily Goldblum. She is, I aspire to be her. She does all this healthy cooking. She's a great mother. Oh gosh. Yeah. Jeff Goldblum is living. He met her at the gym. He saw her across the gym and he hit on her. Yeah. He liked the contortionist moves that she was doing.
I was thinking, wow, it's amazing he's still alive. And and I told this person, whoops, yeah, I'm sorry. I guess you are too late.
He's a brilliant human being, and he's wonderful. Everybody loves Jeff Goldblum. He's the only person I know in Hollywood that everybody across the board always loves. I don't know anyone who doesn't love Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah,
and you do a great impression. You doing an awesome.
No, my impression is terrible. It's no Matt Friend, that's for sure. But the person we're going to talk to actually did impressions back when he did comedy, and I don't want to keep him waiting too much longer. But he was a very funny comic. One of the guys I really enjoyed working with. We first met. Well, I'll tell that story when he comes up. Let's bring up Mike Vance.
Yes, another a Houstonian.
Yes.
Another one? Are there?
We had a Houston comic up with his own podcast about a month ago. And he was talking all about Houston and why it's the most diverse city in all of the country and how amazing it is. And he just went on and on about Houston. And now I'm like, wow. So now we have another Houstonian here.
Well, a lot of good comedies come out of there.
Yeah, it absolutely has. Slade moved from Beaumont to Houston. And I was born in Houston and now don't live there anymore.
Oh,
so you're no longer.
I was going to ask you that if you're still in Houston.
Now, about 2 hours away, out in the middle of nowhere.
Where? In which direction did you go? Closer.
Halfway between Houston and Austin.
Okay.
So
there's not really. That's where Elon Musk is buying up all that. He's buying up all that land over there.
Yeah, he's 2 counties west of where I am, and so that means he hasn't dumped shit into our water yet.
I asked Slade Ham about it, and he said he was not intimidated by Elon Musk. Bring it, Elon. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I dropped my Twitter account the day that he bought it, so he hasn't called since then. We have had no interaction.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we met doing a Bob Shoemaker gig in the Cayman Islands. Shoemaker was notorious for paying kind of small dollars to his comics, but he had some great gigs in great places like the Cayman Islands and the Virgin Islands and Cancun. I never made it to Cancun, Mexico, unfortunately.
I didn't do his Cancun deal, but I went to London on
London.
on
It came
dime,
after I
which
moved.
was, that was a blast. In fact, Bob came over there to hang out. I was with Jimmy Pineapple in London for it was a 2-week gig, I think.
Mhm.
That was just to go off on a tangent immediately. That was a good gig. I mean, you had all the lost in translation issues and all of that, but Pineapple and I saved up every little Shoemaker dollar we got on that gig and decided we're going to go spend it all in France and Spain. So
Ah,
before we left London, we bought our ticket. We paid for a hotel room for the last night,
Mhm.
bought our ticket from the Victoria Station to the airport, did everything. I mean, we planned ahead. We had all of our transfers paid for. So we were literally going to spend every dime we had partying around France and Spain. And we forgot that we needed to eat when we got back to London. So we came back, made it to London, and we were out of money. I mean, both of us had less than $10 US at that point. And we went to Shoemaker's Club and worked out a deal and said, can we MC the shows? There was a first and second show. We'll MC them if you just feed us. That's all we need, food and drink. So I went up and MC'd one of the shows with this ridiculous French accent, introduced as Michel Boyer from Poitiers, and told Belgian jokes. They were Aggie jokes, translated into Belgian jokes, told by this fake French guy. And it was the best set that I had there over the 2 weeks. It was
funny.
It was both good and kind of, not exactly a real self-esteem reinforcer either, but it was a blast.
But yeah, the story was there. I mean, you had a wonderful time when you were over there, and
So,
who wouldn't? I mean, it's
yeah.
great.
So we were in the Cayman Islands. We also worked in St. Pete together, and I don't know if
Correct.
those were Shoemaker gigs or not.
Yes,
What?
there's the St. Pete. That's his main club with the Coconuts in St. Petersburg. There.
Yeah, but there were all
That
these
was-
one-nighters.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, unless it was. We called them the Vermin Brothers back then. Harrison Holland, maybe a Harrison Holland gang. Ron Bennington had a club there in Clearwater. Yeah, there was a lot of clubs in that area.
Yeah. So the story I'm thinking about is that we went, you and I think it was the first time you'd ever been to a baseball game.
Oh, really?
And it was spring training in 1991.
Oh my God. You were the one that got me started on that.
And I know this.
I would take my nephew to the spring training games with his baseball card so that we can get him autographed. And you were the one that showed me to do that. You showed me how to do that.
And I have a prop here from 1991. We went to the game. It was at Al Lang Stadium. And it was the Rangers and Cardinals. Both were training there. They were splitting time and they were playing each other that day.
Well, the Orioles and the Cardinals used to play out of that stadium. Yeah.
This was Rangers and Cardinals. And I know that because you wanted to get autographs. And it was like your first autographs. You would stop by a store. And I don't know if they were out of baseballs or whatever. You came back with one baseball and one softball.
Softball, that's right.
So you showed up and you went down with both of them, went down and got them signed. And you gave me I actually asked for the softball. I said, I want the softball. So this is Dave Oliver, who was a coach for the Rangers at the time. Terry Matthews, who was a pitcher that never did anything. But right up here, this is the rookie year of Hall of Famer Pudge Rodriguez.
Oh, funny.
On a softball. So
softball. And the looks they gave me when I handed them that softball. Oh, my God. They're like, you're an idiot.
But I think that I am the only person alive that has Pudge Rodriguez's autograph on a softball, and
On a
it's thanks to you.
softball.
It's thanks to Rory Penland, man. I'm telling you.
That's funny.
So there you go.
So in the Cayman Islands, we were working with Michael Blackjack Wilson, who I reconnected with about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he's just, just killing it, doing cruise ship gigs. He's playing golf with Alice Cooper and Patrick Warburton. Yeah, they play golf together. And he's just living the life, man. So I have an excuse for getting out of comedy. I went to China for 50 years. I actually did find some open mics there and was doing comedy for the last 2-3 years. I was there regularly, and I was doing character comedy. I was going up as a different character every night. Like you said, you did the French guy.
Yeah.
I would do these. And these characters actually led me to start working with Renee on this show. Well, through Dennis Tardon, he had a show that he was doing. And again, it led to Renee and I doing shows together. This one and with General Howitzer, the Big Monster Briefing Room together. And they're all these are the characters that I used to play in China at the open mic nights. So we had a great week there. Mike and I were kind of after a young little girl named Tanya that was there at the same time with her parents, and they had a mishap during we were doing parasailing. And the parasail, I went up to the parasail. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done, but I liked it. And it brought me back in. Then they put Tanya and her mother up in the parasail. It was like a big lazy boy with a parachute over it. And the darn thing caught like the wind and flipped over. And luckily they weren't killed.
Man, I don't remember. I remember her, but I don't remember the parasail. Maybe I didn't go. I was trying to learn to scuba dive. And
yes.
They used to do a thing where they had the resort course that took 2 days of certification, and you could get in it for free if there was a space.
Yes.
So I went through the first day, and then some hotel guest bumped me out, so I never got to finish it.
I got to do a day as well. And the resort course was actually in the swimming pool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You learned how to use your apparatuses and everything in the swimming pool. And then they took you out, and I got really sick coming back up. But it was such an amazing, and I never did. I always said I was going to do it again, and I never did it since. And it was such an amazing, different world down there. But when I came up, evidently it was really choppy, and I got really sick coming up.
Well, Stingray City is the part
I
that
jumped
I
the water
remember.
a little bit.
We went to Stingray City.
You did. I missed that part.
You didn't go with me. That was a blast. It was just what you expect. It's like hundreds of stingrays that you swim with, and they give you little pieces of some kind of fish or food that you hold in your hand. And the big thing was keep your palm flat because they can't see. The eyes are up here, the mouth's down here. And if you stick a thumb up like that, they suck it into their mouth.
Oh.
And so that's all you're thinking about. You're holding this stuff very flat in your palm, but you can pet them on top. It was mind blowing. Yeah.
I remember you really got into it when you went. I missed that because there wasn't room for me or something. So I missed that part, but you really enjoyed it. And you were telling us all about it afterwards.
Yeah. I still tell people about it. And most of them look at me like, you're swimming with stingrays. Why would
Wasn't it a stingray that killed the crocodile hunter?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was after though. I was back in the days when nobody knew about that.
I was just watching a comic do a bit about that the other day, saying, the crocodiles were all pissed off because, they wanted to kill him and he gets done in by a stingray. I can't remember who did the bit, but it was very funny bit. So when did you decide to hang up your comedy hat, and what made you decide that? Because everybody has different reasons.
Yeah. Mine was, it just wasn't as fun as it used to be.
Yeah.
The club started paying less,
Yeah.
and it was all this downward spiral because
Yeah.
when we first started out, the club owners actually cared about the show.
Hmm.
You know, they wanted a good show out there.
Yeah.
And then at some point, some of the club owners decided, and don't get me wrong, let me back up to do a disclaimer. There are still the great clubs that still care about shows.
Yes.
Those are still out there. But a lot of the smaller clubs and medium-sized clubs decided, you know, we can pay less. We don't have to pay a headliner $2,000 a week.
Mm.
We can pay them $1,000 a week for different headliners that are just as good because people are coming in, so they don't care what they're looking at. They just want to see comedy. And consequently, the people that really liked comedy quit going to the club. So then the club owners started giving away tickets. And then the quality of the audience dropped, the quality of the comics dropped. And so a lot of those clubs that were the mid-level and below, they just weren't as good anymore. They just,
Yeah.
you know, when it got to a point when you were headlining, you were making decent money. They're usually paying for your airfare to fly in, and all that evaporated, and it just wasn't any fun.
Yeah.
So I still, every once in a while, it's been a couple of years, but I still do a stand-up gig every once in a while just because we love it. I mean, you know, let's
Yeah.
face it, once you've done stand-up for a living, it's always going to be in you, you know,
Yeah.
you're going to want to do it because there's nothing like that energy give and take with the crowd. There's
Yeah.
just nothing like it. So I kind of quit doing stand-up, had an improv group for a while with a couple of other people that was improv, and we would improv music as part of that, which is something I had never done on stage before.
Mhm.
And out of that, I ended up with a band.
I saw that you wrote a book about your band.
Yep. And we did original music that I wrote most of it. You know, it's just skills that I had no idea that I had at all. My dad was a musician for a while when he was young. And he tried to teach me guitar, and I never really learned that well.
Mhm.
But apparently I had some residue left over that I managed to recycle. So the band lasted for 11 years, and
Oh, wow.
we did okay. We got to go back to Britain and play over there for a while, and we played in Mexico, not for a shoemaker gig, but the band got booked in Cancun, and
Oh, wow.
that was a blast. We played Willie Nelson's Picnic, 4th of July picnic,
Oh, cool.
that was a great story. We show up, and it's 4th of July in Texas, so it's hot, and
Fireworks starting by themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. So we are following Asleep at the Wheel, and then La Mafia was after us, and we show up out there. I mean, that's the way they would have like a palate cleanser music act between these big acts, and that's us. So we show up. We had a song called Idaho that was all of it was humor based stuff. And Willie loved the song Idaho. So when we show up that day and get to the artist entrance, and we're all in the vehicle, you know, excited, we're playing Willie Nelson's Picnic, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And we're like PC Cowboys, and they're looking at their clipboard going, no, we don't have you. So we're like, but Willie loves our song Idaho. And they went, Idaho? Y'all are Idaho? Well, come on in. So we get in there, we're doing our set, and we finish. It's a little short set. You know, we're doing 3 songs, and the guy's looking, and he goes, you got 9 minutes, and I don't mean 9.5. That was our welcome to the stage. So we do our songs. I walk off, and we thought we're just there. I mean, I never ask about money or anything. And this little production assistant person comes up and goes, okay, you're the one in charge. Follow me to the trailer. And I'm thinking, okay. So we go walking over to this trailer, and they open the door, and there's Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel, who is like 6'8", And he's sitting there and he's got a briefcase full of cash. And
Jeez.
he just looks over and they're like, "Can you shut the door?" So we shut the door and we wait. And here comes Ray with his briefcase full of cash. And for the first time, I'm thinking, holy shit, we're getting paid. I'm going to get a briefcase full of cash. This is incredible. So we go in and there's a person that give me a little thing to sign. And I'm like, yeah, where's my briefcase? And they hand me a envelope like, here you go. So we got $400, not exactly a briefcase, but we got a little, like a credit card.
Hey, that's 400 you weren't expecting.
Yeah, it's 400 we weren't expecting, but for a brief moment, I'm thinking we are wealthy.
We're going to get a briefcase full of cash.
Yeah.
That's a song, Renee. Briefcase full of cash.
Yeah. Someday.
I remember you're really into sports. You love sports. And I remember you telling me a story about a friend of yours that was trying to get an autograph from, was it Mickey Mantle?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Are you okay telling that story here?
Yeah. Yeah, that was Adam Leslie, actually. Who
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's another comic.
Yeah.
For
Adam, and I don't know if Adam's still with us or not. I don't think so. But grew up in New York. And this is another Florida story. But I used to work the comic strip over in Fort Lauderdale. And that was a fun gig. It was 3 comics, and you kind of headlined, sort of.
Okay.
A lot of times you rotated the show, and
so
great
3
room.
strong acts.
Yeah. And great room, just a great room. And they put you up in this house. And that house, do you remember the house?
There were different comedy condos for the different Florida gigs. So yeah, they all kind of run together for me, but they would usually get like a 3-bedroom apartment or house. And
yeah, this was a house that had a pool. It had a swimming pool. It was in a nice neighborhood. Very unsuspecting neighbors that, would look over and go, what the hell are those guys doing? I woke up there one morning and Mitchell Walters was laying by the pool in a Speedo.
Mitchell Walters.
And yeah, in a Speedo. And I go walking outside. He's like, hey, yeah, the horses are running. And I didn't want to wake anybody. So I thought I'd just lay by the pool. How are you? So Mitchell was one of my favorite guys. Anyway.
He was a fun guy.
Adam Leslie, who I worked with several times at different places. In fact, I think Adam was the first guy at that Lauderdale gig that took me for sushi.
Okay.
So my first sushi was in Florida, even though I was, I think, living in California at the time. But Adam was at the Yankees were training at the time in Fort Lauderdale. And he grew up a Yankees fan, and Adam was older. So, he was around for those, I guess, late 50s Yankees, certainly into the early 60s, but I think he was around for the late 50s ones. And he went out to another guy like Mitchell that gambled nonstop on anything, but he managed to fit in a Yankees game, and it was an old timers kind of thing. And he goes out after the Yankees game, he goes to the horse track. And sure enough, as he's leaving the horse track, I mean, this is after the 10th race, he's walking out, and lined up with their back against this wall is Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Billy Martin, and Whitey Ford.
Oh, jeez.
And here's Adam, who grew up a Yankee fan, and he's like, holy shit, this is like the best day of my life.
Trifecta.
I mean, these are four of the greatest Yankees of his childhood that are all standing in a row right there at the horse track.
At the track.
And yeah, so he pulls out a racing form that he's got, and he walks up and he says, my God, I grew up in New York. I'm a lifelong Yankees fan. Can you please sign this? And he starts at the end, and Whitey Ford signs it, and Billy Martin signs it, and Yogi Berra signs it. And he hands it over. Adam takes it from Yogi and hands it to Mickey Mantle. And Mantle looks at him and goes, "Get the fuck away from me." So Adam's just crushed. He said the other guy's kind of, that's Mick. That's the Mick. And they go wandering off, all walking off. And Adam's just standing there with his racing form, just crushed. Apparently Mickey had a bad day at the track. Can I tell you, should have caught him somewhere else.
But the story I heard you tell was somebody had a card or something that he didn't want to sign at it, like a signing. And he bumped it over. He like flicked it back at them. And I can't remember who it was that you said it was. I don't think it was even a person that I knew.
No, that was my buddy. It was Charlie Shannon.
Okay.
And also Mickey Mantle, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah,
we're gonna trash Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, we are. Because what's he gonna do now? Huh? Bring it on, Mick. Although I got at the end, but Charlie Shannon was at a card show. Charlie, by the way, incredibly funny comic that passed away several years ago. But he had like you said, an item that he wanted Mickey Mantle to sign, and Mantle didn't like it, or it wasn't authorized, or whatever the deal was.
Right.
And he hands it there, and he's waited in line. He's paid a fee, by the way. It's at a card show.
Right.
So he's probably ponied up at the time $50 or something, to get Mantle to sign this. And he lays it down there, and Mantle looks at it and, like you said, flicks it back.
Just thumps it.
Charlie's like, what's it? And hands it, kind of slides it back over. And Mick goes again and flicks it back at him. And this time Charlie flicks it back at Mick like they're playing a game at the high school lunch table. And Mick's like, "Yeah, I'm not signing that." And Charlie stood there in line and goes, "Mick's a dick. Mick's a dick." Security
ushered him out.
Yeah, I have to say, though, that Mickey Mantle had one of my favorite lines ever on, I think it was the Letterman show, could have been Carson, that he's on there, and it was right as Pete Rose had passed Ty Cobb for the all-time hit lead. And whoever the host was said, "So what do you think of Pete Rose becoming the all-time hit king?" And Mickey said, "If I had that many singles, I'd have to wear a dress."
So now you were actually a journalist, a sports journalist for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, of sorts. A TV journalist. I don't know. I mean, yeah, TV people say they're journalists, but the newspaper guys never really buy into that.
Okay.
But yeah, I did sports on a couple of TV stations and radio as well. Most of it was humor, sports and humor that was mixed, but sometimes they would send me down to do a humorous take on something that was going on. I had my credentials with the Astros and Rockets and Texans, I guess, for a while. Although I was mostly in that gap between when the Oilers left down and the Texans started.
Okay.
But, the only place I ever got thrown out of was the Houston Comets, the WNBA team that they had. And that was, I was doing radio at the time. And our show, there was a very funny comic from Dallas named John McDowell. And we had him on, and we would do sports jokes, this little block of sports jokes, because I was doing afternoon drive. We're on from 3 to 6, I guess, or 3 to 7. And we did current events, and we did book interviews, and we did, all kinds of stuff. But the sports block was all sports and humor, and it was called the Athletic Supporters. And whenever we interviewed people, we would say, by the way, our show is called the Athletic Supporters. Can we get you doing a clip? I put on the Athletic Supporters, or, something like that. So I did my interviews with a couple of these players at the Comets, the WNBA, and I said, okay, so our show is called The Athletic Supporters, and if you could, give us a sound bite. And this woman, she like looks like, So she's just about to do it, and there's like this hand on the back of my shoulder going, okay, you're done. All right.
They thought you were like a
Out.
Howard Stern plant or something.
Yeah. So
out you go.
Out you go. That was the end of my WNBA journalistic career. But yeah.
But this actually led to you starting to write books, right?
Yeah. The first book, I guess I had already done by that time. I wrote a book back when I was still doing comedy called Oilers Anonymous. And it was a 12-step program for Houston Oilers fans. And it was one of those ideas, you're sitting at a bar and you're like, hey, this would be a great idea. So I kind of wrote the book up, or at least a mock-up, and went down to, there was a place in Houston at the time, they're out of business, of course, which I like to think I had a hand in, called Gulf Publishing. And I went down there and pitched this idea, and the guy's like, well, that's great. I love it. Let's do it. And, you read.
Give me $500.
Yeah, I'm sure you read the same stuff. You're like, okay, well, it takes forever to get a book published, and you're pitching to publishers, and you need this and this and this. And I had one meeting, and the guy's like, great, let's do it. I'm thinking, that was a lot easier than I thought it was. Of course, I, ultimately made zero money out of the deal, because the thing, I mean, like most publishers, there wasn't a lot of marketing that was done on it. But yes, that was my first book. And I've since done a few sports things, got into, in fact, I have props here for you, Rory. I got into true crime.
Yes.
And that was really, it was a weird thing because I'd written straight history books before, Texas history and sports. So Texas history and sports, they have a passionate following, but let's face it, most sports people are not readers necessarily. And so, you'd go out and you'd do a speaking engagement, and if you had 30 people, you're thinking, okay, this is all right. I have 30 people here. I sold 10 books. Yeah, this is great. I'm an author. So I did true crime. There was a buddy of mine named John Novalomax, and he and I, again, probably bar conversation, decided we're going to do this historic true crime. And we wrote a book called
Now, this is a Texas true crime, right?
Yeah, it was Houston, actually Houston area, called Murder and Mayhem in Houston.
Yeah.
And these true crime stories that nobody really knew. And it started, I think the earliest one was like 1839. The latest one,
and I went through a phase where I was reading true crime. I was reading about, Gacy and Bundy and Dahmer and different serial killers and stuff. And there was even a true crime trading cards. Do you remember those?
No, I missed out on those.
That had the blood like splattered on them. You could collect, serial killers. And then there was another set that was like gangsters, like Al Capone and Babyface Nelson and stuff like that. I mean, they had two sets. One of them was like mass murderers. The other one was like the gangsters. And they did like two series of these.
I missed out on
and
that.
Parents were aghast.
I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had baseball cards. I had Beatles trading cards at one point, I think, but no murderers. I didn't have any murderers.
You don't have a John Wayne Gacy?
No. I'll trade you. I got an extra Ringo Starr. But yeah, so we wrote this book, and the first time I went out to do a speaking engagement on it, it's like 100 people and it's standing room only.
Wow.
And that's when it dawned on me. Yeah. Like you said, people like this true crime stuff.
Yes.
It's murder.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So I did, after that book, I did this book. Getting Away with
Mhm.
Bloody Murder, which it revolves around this lawyer that nobody's ever heard of, but he was involved in a couple of cases I did for the first book. And then this came out, and at some point I decided, these are great stories. I want to do these as novels. So I wrote the first novel, just went off to the beta readers today, as a matter of fact, this morning. And it's it's a fictionalized version of one of the cases in that book. And if it does well, then I got 20 more behind it.
Oh, wow.
I can sit there and be writing these stories, and they're fun. I mean, like you said, I was a deprived kid. I didn't know that murder was a blast. So yeah,
It's a guilty pleasure.
yeah.
But no, again, you said people like it. It's more like it's just kind of creepy and fascinating. We want to read about it. We want to educate ourselves. If you find out what their motive or their modus operandi is, you can maybe save your life or something. But it's just fascinating how they lured all these people, into,
I don't know how
the motives, the reasons. Woo.
Yeah. I don't know how I missed the popularity of it, because that's what I watch on television. I love the crime shows.
Yeah.
But I had just never read those. I read mystery stuff. I mean, I read some of it, but I never even thought about writing it until I had this epiphany of, people actually do show up and they do buy these books. So, yeah. So first novel in that series, hopefully
3 times the audience, sold more books. Yeah.
And then if you want a book that nobody will buy ever, write a book about stand-up comedy.
Because we can't tell Eddie Brill that. Everybody wants him to write that book.
Well, it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch, fun to write. It was cathartic, I guess.
Yeah.
Telling stories, and by the end of it, there's another volume there, but I'll never probably do it because, like I said, it doesn't sell. The other comics want to read it because they know all the people that are involved.
Right.
But
the general public, no.
It's called Stand-Up Stories, and it truly is mostly about the 80s and early 90s when comedy clubs were great, and when we were having a fantastic time, and when cell phones weren't around and we could get away with a lot of shit that we couldn't get away with today. And so there are all of those stories are in there. The only punches that I really pulled on that were anything that could potentially land anybody in jail or end their marriage.
Oh, jeez.
I left that out.
Well, that's good. That was nice of you.
Yeah. I'm a good guy. So, but it was,
you could have cashed in.
Yeah.
You could have sold a lot more books, but you're
probably. Nice. So, I mean, think about when you were doing stand-up, there are probably stories that you were involved in or around that you would swap with other comics, but you may not tell to the general public or your immediate family. So what are those? Tell us.
I will tell you a story. You probably remember Ollie Joe Prater.
Oh yes. And he's in the book a lot.
Yeah. He was tipping the scale at like 350 pounds, I'm guessing, maybe more. He tells a story in his act about one night when he used to wear a white shirt and a cowboy hat up on stage and jeans all the time. And one night he felt some like sweat on his upper lip, and he wiped his white shirt on his nose, and it was blood red, the sleeve. It just turned red. And the whole crowd at the same time just went, and his tagline on that was, "What? You son of a bitches don't party?" And that was Ollie Joe.
The story behind that I heard from Ollie Joe was something had happened. He was touring in the Southeast. And I mean, this is a guy, for people that never saw him, that his whole persona was that he was this redneck cowboy
Right.
dude. He was from Michigan in real life.
Ah,
But he had this big beard and
he was on the trucker tapes that you could buy at the truck stops all along I-95 and here with John Fox, who was not Southern again, with Jeff Foxworthy, who is from Georgia. This was before Larry the Cable Guy, who we know as Dan Whitney, who again not really from the South,
right.
But yeah, those tapes, those cassette tapes that truckers would buy to stay awake on the road. Yeah, he was always on those.
Ollie Joe, the story that I heard for the nosebleed deal is he was working in LaGrange, Georgia, and he was big. I mean, because of those tapes you're talking about, people knew him in that part of the country. I mean, he had a huge following, and he's playing some theater, and apparently, I don't know if there was something with the law, whatever it was. He was really late getting to this gig.
Jeez.
Got there like an hour before, and he hadn't slept. That's why I'm thinking he may have been in jail overnight. I'm not sure of that. But he shows up and he looks at the club owner and he goes, "I need some nose candy." And they're like, "It's not really what we do." But somehow, I don't know where it came from, but Ollie Joe found some, and that's what led to him being on stage. Yeah.
On stage.
Yeah. There's some great Ollie Joe stories in there, and some John Fox. John was just a blast to hang out with. Wouldn't want to be him. But,
Fox was the one that told me that Rodney was a huge coke hound.
Oh yeah.
Like a young person. Was how he put it.
Houston comics, like all city comics, you tended to hang on to your buddies, your local buddies and stuff. And I had gotten a call one day from, and this was probably back when we had the answer services that you had to call into, pre-cell phone. And I got a call from Sam Kennison, who's a, good buddy. And and so he leaves this phone number to call him back. I didn't recognize the phone number, and I call it back. Phone rings, and this guy goes, "Hello." I'm like, "Rodney? Yeah. Who's this?" So it's Sam staying at Rodney's house. And for the longest time, I had Rodney's phone number in my phone book, thanks to Sam staying over at his place.
Too funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ollie Joe, one night I was at the Comedy Corner. This was before we met. I was the MC at the Comedy Corner, and they had a wooden floor in that club. And Ollie Joe was sitting on a bar stool at the end of the bar, drinking after the show, as he did. And we're all doing stuff, around the club, and all of a sudden we hear this huge wham, and everybody kind of leaps comes off the floor for like a half an inch, and so it's like Jurassic Park, the water, the whole place shook, and it was Ollie Joe had fallen back in the bar stool, and bam, it hit the floor. So
I assume he just shook it off.
Yeah, he just shook it off like nothing happened. Yeah, I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah. Thankfully we don't party like that now, or a lot of the people that did that for a long time are no longer around, including the three we just named. Rodney, by the way, John Fox too, very supportive of young comics and new comics.
Yes.
Rodney used to, when he'd come to Houston on tour, would always come by the workshop where all of us are hanging out, and would always leave tickets for us at his show. If it's one of the big halls, music halls or whatever, We always got tickets to Rodney's show, hang out backstage with him. Just the greatest guy ever. The one thing I will say is when you're hanging out with Rodney backstage, he had a habit of right before he went on, he would get dressed into his suit. And when he came off, he would immediately take the suit off and put on a bathrobe. So you'd be sitting there, and then Rodney's bathrobe would be coming open, and you're just kind of like,
Good.
all right, Rodney. Okay, buddy. I'm going to tighten that bathrobe back up there.
Hey, say hi to the boys. Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, I'll tell you.
Yeah. No, they're not, Rodney.
Oh man. So what else has been happening in your life this past few years since you've been writing? I mean,
Mostly, the thing about writing is it's like stand-up. You get into the flow of it,
Mhm.
and you just want to do more of it. That's the beauty of it. So it's almost like,
that's how I feel about social media shows.
yeah. And unlike stand-up where you wait all day, you're waiting all day until showtime with very little to do. I remember there were a couple of guys that I worked with, headliners, LA guys, that Denny Johnston was one of them. Trying to think who else. Richard Lewis maybe had been working on something, but they were working on screenplays for them, not novels.
Yeah.
But they would be during the day. That's what they're working on. And I was not doing that. I wish I had have. Now, a few years into that, I started doing writing and working on screenplays and different, just for amusement, like short stories and stuff like that. But I never really got into the book writing until after I had left comedy. And it becomes addictive.
I wrote several screenplays, several when I was in China, and that led to me writing the 2 novels that I got published. And like you say, once you get into the role of, once you get into this, the rhythm of it, I guess is the best way to describe it, and you get your flow going, of course, sometimes you hit writer's block, but I used to rotate my projects to get around that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I'm knocking on wood. Usually I do not hit writer's block because I rotate. If I get stuck on one thing, I'll go to another project.
Yeah.
So having just sent that novel off, I'm actually today been obviously looking forward to doing this and hanging out and visiting with you.
Yeah.
But the other part is I've been like, okay, what do I start next? Because I got to have a project to start.
Yeah.
And I'll be at night, lights out, trying to fall asleep. And I'll think of, that's what the character needs to say this. And I get out of bed and walk into the kitchen and pen and paper. And I'm writing down little notes to myself.
Notepads. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't forget. And it's a line of dialogue or something that's the perfect thing that I want to put in there.
There you go.
And, it's really like you get jonesing for getting on stage and doing stand-up. It's really kind of the same thing. One thing I will say, writing jokes for your act, it's got to be every word has to count.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. And those lessons work great for writing a novel, especially when you're writing dialogue, because you don't waste any words. That's your training that's just ingrained, in my case, since I was 17 years old.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that connection.
Yeah. So it's all skill sets. The skill sets they all mesh together. The screenwriting stuff, you can use some of that same structure. And what kind of screenwriting? What were you, did you ever have any success in any of
I
that?
started out writing horror stuff, and I only got one produced. We did Deadly Species down in 2002. It was a little low budget film that got made here, and Artisan Films ended up buying it right before they tanked. I like to think I had a part in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
always good to look at the resume and go, they're closed, they're out of business, that guy's in prison.
um, and then I was actually a cleanup artist in one of the Chinese sweat houses for my first year there, for like the first 9 months. And I got inspired to write a whole bunch of animated screenplays for animated movies. So I'm sitting on a stack of those. And I just continue to write that stuff. And I've written all kinds of stuff. But yeah, most of what I did when I was in China was the animated movies. You know, I did one called Mei Mei and Little Dragon, and Red the Singing Cowboy. Uh, oh my God, there was one that was a splatter, which was a riff on the slasher films of like the 80s.
You get these weird connections. I had a writing partner, and we had been doing sitcom stuff, because sitcoms, you know, even though they have a writing staff, a good, robust writing staff, they're turning out in the old days 26 episodes, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
So they would buy, usually on an average sitcom, they would accept maybe 2 scripts a year or a season that came from outside people.
Right.
And so we sold a few of those, and it was by virtue of knowing the producer. But we had written some scripts that did not get purchased for one reason or another. We did sell 2. There was a BBC sitcom that was done by the same producer that we had done other stuff for, but the show was called My Family, and they wanted an American style sitcom. They had never had one.
Okay.
So my writing partner and I wrote these 2 scripts for the first year. They loved them. They bought them. You know, we got our WGA credit and the whole thing, and they never really got made. They cannibalized some jokes that they put in other scripts. The problem was British sitcoms, and if you think about it, they're no kids.
Yeah.
So they wanted an American style sitcom with a family and kids that are funny in their own right, but yet they had no child actors that could pull that off. So when they got our scripts, they're like, these are brilliant. And they tried to get the kids to do it, the ones they'd cast, and they couldn't pull off the jokes. So, like I said, we got paid. But
there you go.
We wrote one of the most frustrating one. We got an in to write an episode of The Sopranos and wrote the script. And by the time it worked back into the chain, their story arc had passed by where our script was.
Yeah.
So that one never got done either.
Flashback.
Yeah, exactly.
How you doing?
The weird.
What are you talking about, huh?
The weird part is I was already back in Texas at that point, and I get a phone call one day. You got a meeting at Disney with like a high up executive at Disney who likes your writing, so you need to be out there. So I fly back to LA. My writing partner and I show up at this meeting, and we got no idea. I mean, we're looking like you're looking right now. We're thinking, what the hell are we doing at Disney? You know, what have we possibly done that fits into the Disney group?
We didn't write Disney.
Yeah. So we go in and we meet with this guy, and it's a top floor. This is like I said, an exec, you know, VP. I mean, a big guy. And he comes in and, you know, he's a man, really good to meet you. This is great. I called you in because I loved your Sopranos script. And we're both thinking, okay,
cool.
That's great. But exactly what is Disney producing that is like the Sopranos? And he goes, I really want you to pitch me 3 episodes of Lizzie McGuire, which we had never even heard of. We had to go research. It's a, you know, early teenager show. And we pitched. We never did anything for him because the pitches, we got the show Bible, and the show had been on for like 9, 10, 11 years at that point.
Oh, geez.
So they'd done everything. So we worked out these three episodes that weren't in the show Bible and pitched them. And they're like, yeah, we've kind of done this. Like, where? We've read everything that there is. Every episode you've done, we've read.
Mm.
And they're like, well, we may not have done it, but I think we talked about it. So we're not doing that. So we got nothing out of it. But that was the weirdest writers meeting I ever had.
But they flew you in, right? Or
Well, I think that may have been on my dime. I don't know. But
oh man.
But whatever.
Well, that sucks then.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, because I worked. I actually have a Disney story because I worked as in the sweatshop in China. I was doing cleanup art for a show called Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go, which had like 3 seasons. And I went out to LA on a trip back to America for some reason. I stopped off in LA to see my cousin out there. And I got an invite to come to the Disney Studios office there for Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. And, they said, we love what you guys are doing out there. I was a cleanup artist. And he said, we love what you guys are doing out there. If you could just bump up the contrast a little bit. He's telling me what to tell the guys back in the shop. And I'm like, they don't understand me. But okay, I'll figure. And again, we don't have the translators and the phones. I had one guy that I used to talk to there, who's a good friend of mine, Xiao Bin, and he was a major artist, in the game. I mean, he'd worked on many different shows out of China there, because they were cheap. You can get art cheap from China. Then they started going to the Philippines and India, after. And that sweatshop closed down, but I was already teaching English by the time that closed down. So anyway, but yeah, I got to go into the Disney Studios there, and as a guest, and that was fun.
It's weird.
Nice, gave me stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. Doing any sort of show business or any sort of creative stuff, projects come along, and a lot of times you take them just for the cash. You're like, I know nothing about this, but I'm going to do it because it's a little bit of money, and okay, fine. So I've done a lot of anime voiceover.
Oh, okay.
I know nothing about anime. I don't watch anime. I have a giant bin. Used to in the old days when they did them on DVDs, they would you'd get a DVD of the program you're on. Mm-hmm. So I have a bin that's like, I don't know, 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, and it's filled with DVDs of shows that I was doing. And I can name you maybe 3 of them. But the people
again, you used to do voices. It was funny that we all ended up in the Cayman Islands together, because Blackjack Wilson was all about doing voices. I did voices, and you did some voices. Your Sean Connery was the one that I based my Sean Connery off of.
It's funny how that happened. And in the show intro, by the way, I saw John Biner, who is a favorite. He was hosted Comedy on the Road on A&E for a while. And I was on that show in New Orleans that Biner hosted. So good guy, real good guy.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart, wonderful guy. I love his wife, Annie, too. Annie Gabus. We had her on the show a couple weeks after.
Cool.
Because she's an interesting person, too. She's got a lot of cool stuff going on in her life. But can you do your Connery line for us? Is that okay?
If it's the line that I'm thinking of,
kinky sex.
Yes, that came out of a night in Dallas at the Comedy Corner in Dallas after the show, and Gene McGuire and I were getting just hammered at the front bar, and I started doing just a string of impressions, but not what you would normally hear them say. But it was Sean Connery pedophile.
Oh,
that was, are you absolutely certain that you're only 8 years old?
I hadn't heard that one. But the line I heard was the kinky sex.
That's fiction, saying, by the way, if there's anybody from the Sean Connery family.
Yes.
Totally made up.
Would you like me to use the salad tongs?
That was the clean version.
I didn't expect you to go there, but that's funny.
That was the
And
clean
later,
version.
it inspired me to do a James Mason impersonation. James Mason doing porn. I'm exceedingly moist right now. That was the bit.
I don't remember all of them. I remember the Connery, because that was usually the one where the club owners in the back going. So there was a Jimmy Stewart one. Yeah, there were a few, and they were late night, but other comics, of course, would come in and wait for those and go, hey, do those.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and having some fun with us and telling us what's going on in your life. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fun.
And Renee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. And
do you have anything you would like to ask Mike before we
I think you hit all the main points. It's been a fantastic interview, and I think he should come back. I think he's got more stories to tell. I think there's a lot.
I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah,
I'd like to get a copy of that comedy book signed.
Oh yeah. That's what I should do the plug. If you want signed copies of any of the books, it's MikeVanceWriter.com. And there's a store on there, or they're also available through Amazon, but that's going to be a forged signature by somebody in the warehouse.
which is lovely. It's just as valid in some respects.
I don't want them to get any of that money. I want you to get the money.
That's right.
We want Mike to get the money.
We do.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, we do. Thank you for being here, Mike. And everybody stick around right now. In a few minutes, we have a Journeys coming up. And it's going to be about medical gaslighting and the discrepancies between males and females as they're getting a diagnosis. Women have to wait longer than men to get a diagnosis. It's going to be an interesting show. So stick around. It'll be on right after this.
And Thursday, the Big Monster Briefing Room is doing Hammer's version of The Mummy from 1959 with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. And our guest is Panorea.
I love her. I love her. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mike, again for being here.
Hey, thank y'all very much.